The General Confederation of Workers of Peru began a national strike to demand the resignation of the President Dina Boluarte and the closure of the Congress. Syria and Turkey continue to receive international solidarity to address the emergency after Monday's devastating earthquake, while the death toll now surpassed 21,000. In response to the country's ongoing electricity crisis, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has declared a national disaster. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. And now we begin with the news. The General Confederation of Workers of Peru began a national strike to demand the resignation of President Dina Boluarte and the closure of the Congress. Likewise, the Unitary Union of Education Workers announced that it joined the protest in order to demand the Congress to bring forward the general elections. The day coincides with the first month of the massacre in Juliaca, which left 18 dead. The International Solidarity and Human Rights Mission joined the mobilizations to verify the actions of the security forces. And the Brazilian government sets up a 19-ministry commission to combat deforestation in the Amazon. The Ministry of Environment and Climate Change declared that the interministerial group will work to end deforestation in all Brazilian biomes. The ministry also pointed out that the participation of the authorities present shows the government's commitment to environmental policy. The priorities of the current government will be to monitor actions to combat forest clearing, and to follow up on public policies aimed at preserving green areas. On Thursday, Colombian Vice President Francia Marquez arrived in Cuba to keep strengthening bilateral relations with the Caribbean island. Marquez will participate in Havana's International Book Fair 2023 and hold meetings with Cuban authorities during her stay. The high official had previously visited Cuba, representing the victims at the peace dialogue tables between the Colombian state and the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, FARC. The Colombian representative expressed her satisfaction to be back in Cuba and her affection towards this country and its people.
I wish to thank the government of Cuba for having our country as a guest of honor at the Havana Book Fair. I think it is also an opportunity to thank Cuba for all the commitment to peace in our country. I came here more than 6 years ago as a victim of the armed conflict with a dream, hope, and a heart that peace and the process that was taking place between the FARC and the Colombian state will bring relief to many communities in many territories. Today, I come here as a vice president with the same commitment.
In the Dominican Republic, the health sector workers began a general strike to demand changes in the social security system of Luis Abinader's government. The president of the Dominican Medical Association, the CMD, Senencaba, said the strike is a response to the National Social Security Council's refusal against expanding the catalog of the basic service plan, the replacement of codes by the number of the school fees, and the unification of fees. Caba also indicated doctors will continue on strike until next Friday, so their demands are heard. Finally, Caba assured that the solution to the conflict is in the hands of President Luis Abinader in his role as the health guarantor of the Dominican people. And the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, met with Haiti Prime Minister Ariel Henry as part of a two-day official visit to assess the current situation in the Caribbean country as gun violence continues to grow. During his visit, the official also met with other government officials and representatives of civil society. Haiti's nearly 200 gangs have taken advantage of the difficult situation we're in for control. In December, the UN estimated that gangs control 60% of the country's capital. The Caribbean country has been plagued by political turmoil following the assassination of the President Jovenel Moïse in 2021, but had also suffered waves of devastating earthquakes, hurricanes, and cholera outbreaks.
I've heard about 500,000 children living in these circumstances, not being able to go to school properly, not being able to be comforted by their parents because their parents are afraid of what might happen the next day. I hear that 20,000 people are in catastrophic famine-like conditions in a country where the world does not put the spotlight on. This country, the people, the most impoverished ones, those who are in the most vulnerable situations, need help.
Let's take a short break, but first, remember you can follow us on our TikTok account at TeleSUR English, in which you will be able to see news in different formats, news updates and more. Other stories coming up, stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. Syria and Turkey continue to receive international solidarity to address the emergency after the devastating earthquake. The number of deaths in both countries has climbed to more than 21,000, according to the latest figures from authorities and the rescue organizations. The World Health Organization Director General Tedros Ghebreyesus said the organization sent expert teams and special flights with medical supplies to both nations. Meanwhile, rescue teams continue to search for thousands of people suspected to be entrapped under the rubble. But optimism is fading over freezing temperatures and the 72-hour deadline that is considered crucial to save lives. According to the Syrian state media, more than 200,000 people have been forced to leave their homes due to this week's deadly earthquake, while close to 70,000 people have been reported injured in both countries hit by the quake. The international community joins efforts to provide assistance to Turkey and Syria after the 7.8 magnitude earthquake that struck both countries on Monday. According to Turkish and Syrian authorities, representatives of several nations, organizations and social groups arrived in the affected areas with tons of supplies. Hundreds of rescuers and volunteers from several countries are collaborating in the search and rescue efforts. Among the states that have already provided assistance are Russia and Venezuela. The United Nations approved a first aid of $25 million for Ankara and Damascus, while calling on the international community to continue with the cooperation. And Venezuelan rescuers arrive in Turkey and Syria with tons of humanitarian assistance. The government of Venezuela sent food, medicines, and a group of 50 rescuers, technicians, and search and rescue specialists in order to support the humanitarian work in the affected areas in both countries. The ambassador of Venezuela in Syria, Jose Gregorio Biomorgi, together with Syrian authorities, received the humanitarian aid at the Damascus airport. The diplomat said that more than 15 tons of medicines and food had arrived, as well as specialized rescue equipment that will be at the full disposal of the Syrian people and government. On Thursday, the Palestinian government sent a team of rescuers to Syria and Turkey as a sign of solidarity in the face of the recent catastrophe in both nations. The Palestinian Rapid Response and Rescue Team, supervised by the Palestinian Agency for International Cooperation, has headed on Thursday to both Syria and Turkey to help the population of regions affected by the earthquakes. The Palestinian Red Crescent reported that it will send 25 of its doctors to help in the relief efforts. Meanwhile, members of the Palestinian American community in the United States have appealed for contributions to support the institutions working in the ground in both countries to house displaced families. And we stay in this story. On Friday, the U.S. Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control has issued one license, which authorizes for 180 days all earthquake relief-related transactions. The Treasury Department stressed in a release that U.S. sanctions in Syria will not stand in the way of life-saving efforts for the Syrian people. Earlier this week, southeastern Turkey was hit by strong earthquakes that killed more than 21,000 people and injured tens of thousands more. The latest development comes after the U.S. was widely criticized for not earlier lifting sanctions in the immediate wake of the devastating earthquakes that killed thousands across Syria and nearby Turkey. Earlier on Thursday, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said no sanctions should interfere with relief efforts in Syria, as the country is dealing with the fallout of the devastating earthquake. Chilean government reported the devastation of at least 343,000 hectares due to the forest fires affecting the center and south of the country. On Thursday, the Undersecretary of the Interior, Manuel Monsalve, reported that so far there are some 323 fire outbreaks, out of which only 90 have been controlled. It is important to emphasize that fire has left 24 dead, more than 2,000 injured, and 1,180 houses destroyed. In turn, the Undersecretary pointed out that 28 people have been arrested and remain under investigation for suspected arson attacks. And in this context, government authorities announced a package of 13 measures to address the situation of those affected by the fires that hit the center-south of the country. The package includes financial, labor, and material support to citizens who lost their property during the fires in the regions of Biobío, Ñuble, La Araucanía, Los Lagos, and Los Ríos. Officials also announced the delivery of temporary housing with basic services to the families who lost their homes. And we have more news coming up after a final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back. On Thursday, during his State of the Nation speech, South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa declared a national disaster state in response to the country's ongoing electricity crisis. The African leader said the measures will include helping businesses to produce food using backup generators and solar panels. Ramaphosa also said that he will be appointed a Minister of Energy within the executive branch in the coming days to deal with the crisis. The head of state denounced that the electricity emergency was the result of delays in the construction of new coal-fired power stations, corruption in the coal supply contracts, and sabotage against private energy companies.
That without a reliable supply of electricity, businesses cannot grow, assembly lines cannot run, crops cannot be irrigated, and basic services are interrupted. Load shedding means that households and our supermarkets and shops are unable to keep food fresh. Water supply is often disrupted. Traffic lights do not work. Streets are not lit at night. Therefore, as we outline our agenda for the year ahead, our most immediate task is to dramatically reduce the severity of load shedding in the coming months and ultimately to end load shedding altogether.
And the president of the Democratic Republic of Congo, Felix Tshisekedi, arrives in Moroni, capital of the Comoros, where he is received by Azali Assoumani, the president of the Union of the Comoros. The two men discussed several topics during their exchanges, including the development of the Comoros in the coming years.
First of all, he came to congratulate me, to express his wishes for success. We reviewed all the conflicts in Africa. We could not avoid talking about the fighting in the Great Lakes region, so we talked about that too. As he came to Comoros, we talked about bilateral relationships and how we can strengthen them, how Congo and Comoros can come together, especially with the deals we have with Comoros emerging by 2030, and how Congo can accompany us.
Everywhere I have been, I have just returned from Cape Town for a mining conference, the Indaba conference, and I have taken this opportunity to speak about my country and this unjust and barbaric war imposed on us by Rwanda. So I do not miss the opportunity to say so. Of course, we will talk about it, and my hope is that my elder brother here will help to bring peace.
The Russian government announced it is looking to increase its gas supplies to China by 10 billion cubic meters per year. Russia's energy ministry said it had prepared a draft resolution to ratify the agreement, which it will submit to the lower house of parliament, the State Duma, for approval. Moscow and Beijing signed an agreement on additional natural gas supplies from Russia through the Far East route. Russia currently supplies gas to China through the Siberian Forces pipeline under a 30-year bilateral agreement. Deliveries began in 2019, and the pipeline is expected to reach its full operating capacity of 38 billion cubic meters of natural gas per year by 2025. And the Eiffel Tower in Paris, France, was the scene of a demonstration by railway workers, train drivers, and rubbish collectors against the pension reform being promoted by Emmanuel Macron's government. The workers gathered peacefully. They displayed banners rejecting the government's proposal. The delegate of the General Confederation of Workers, Arnaud Bourret, declared that the project affects all sectors and that it is therefore important to seek unity in order to fight for collective rights. Former U.S. President Donald Trump and the Florida Governor Ron DeSantis are tied among Republican voters as the top choice for the presidential nomination in 2024, according to a poll released on Thursday. A Monmouth University poll found that one-third conservative-leaning voters see the mogul as their top presidential choice, and the other third favored DeSantis, whose candidacy has yet to be announced. Only 2% backed former Vice President Mike Pence, who has given slight signals about a run, while former U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations Nikki Haley, who will make her run for the White House official in a few days, garnered just 1%. And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.